mischief to one another, it is but too necessary to put bridles into our mouths. Bentham 1787b, pages 133. Although Bentham theoretically championed laissez-faire in the name of freedom, he was intent on subordinating all aspects of life to the interest of accumulation. Bentham limited his passionate concern with laissez-faire to those who conformed to the norms of a capitalist society. A jarring confrontation with state power was to be the lot of the rest. According to Bentham, property, not the institution of property, but the constitution of property, has become an end in itself. Bentham 1952. Pages 117. Bentham was absolutely clear about the need for this constitution of property. He realized that, although control over labor is a major source of wealth, labor stubbornly resists the will of the capitalist. In Bentham's inimitable language, human beings are the most powerful instruments of production, and therefore everyone becomes anxious to employ the services of his fellows in multiplying his own comforts. Hence the intense and universal thirst for power. The equally prevalent hatred of subjection. Each man therefore meets with an obstinate resistance to his own will, and this naturally engenders antipathy toward beings who thus baffle and contravene his wishes. Bentham 1822, pages 430. Bentham never acknowledged a contradiction between his advocacy of laissez-faire and his proposals for managing labor. For him, between wealth and power, the connection is most close and intimate, so intimate, indeed, that the disentanglement of them, even in the imagination, is a matter of no small difficulty. They are each of them respectively an instrument of the production of other. Bentham 1962, pages 48. Cited in Macpherson 1987, pages 88 to 89. Bentham understood that the struggles to subdue the poor would spill over into every aspect of life. He hoped to turn these struggles into profit for himself and, to a lesser extent, others of his class. Given labor's natural resistance to creating wealth for those who exploited them, unfree labor held an obvious attraction for Bentham. He designed detailed plans for his fabled panopticon, a prison engineered for the maximum control of the inmates in order to profit from their labor. A 1798 companion piece to his design for the panopticon, Pauper Management Improved, Bentham proposed a national charity company, organized on the model of the East India Company, a privately owned, joint stock company, partially subsidized by the government. It was to have absolute authority over the whole body of the burdensome poor, starting with 250 industry houses accommodating 500,000 people, expanding to 500 houses with 1 million people. Bentham N.D., pages 369. Cited Himmelfarb 1985, pages 78. Bentham planned to profit handsomely from these inmates, especially those born in the houses who would have to work as apprentices within the company. He rhapsodized, so many industry houses, so many crucibles, in which dross of this kind the poor is converted into sterling. A strict regimen, unremitting supervision and discipline, economies of diet, dress, and lodging would make profits possible. Jeremy Bentham, vigorous advocate of freedom of commerce that he was, dreamed of the profits that would accrue from the use of inmate labor. What hold can another manufacturer have upon his workmen, equal to what my manufacturer would have upon his? What other master is there that can reduce his workmen, if idle, to a situation next to starving, without suffering them to go elsewhere? What other master is there whose men can never get drunk unless he chooses that they should do so? And who, so far from being able to raise their wages by combination, are obliged to take whatever pittance he thinks it most his interest to allow? Bentham 1797, p. 56. See also Ignatieff 1978. pages 110. In Foucault 1979, Bentham was intent on subordinating every facet of human existence to the profit motive. According to classical political economy, all social conditions and all social institutions were to be judged merely according to their effect on the production of wealth. Bentham recommended that children be put to work at 4 instead of 14. Bragging that they would thereby be spared the loss of those 10 precious years in which nothing is done. Nothing for industry. Nothing for improvement, moral or intellectual. Cited in Himmelfarb 1985, pages 81. Bentham even wanted to promote the gentlest of all revolutions, the sexual revolution. In this regard, Bentham was not the least concerned with furthering the bounds of human freedom, but with ensuring that the inmates would have as many offspring as possible. Ibid, pages 83. Bentham was even planning to call himself Subregumus of the poor. Unfortunately, because of lack of government support, his plans came to naught. In his memoirs, he complained, "But for George III, all the prisoners in England would, years ago, have been made under my management." Bentham 1830-1, pages 96. Alas, Bentham never succeeded in his personal goals. Perhaps, he was too greedy. Perhaps, his methods were too crude. Instead, as we shall see, capitalism found more subtle methods for harnessing labor. As a result, today we remember Bentham as a valiant defender of the ideals of laissez-faire rather than as Subregumus of the poor. Victory. Classical political economy was generally more coy about its intentions than Bentham. Despite its antipathy to indolence and sloth, it covered itself with a flurry of rhetoric about natural liberties. On closer examination, we find that the notion of the system of natural liberties was considerably more flexible than it appeared. Let us turn once again to Francis Hutcheson, who taught Adam Smith about the virtue of natural liberty. In a work that served as a model to Smith's own lectures, Hutcheson wrote, "It is the one great design of civil laws to strengthen by political sanctions the several laws of nature. The populace needs to be taught, and engaged by laws, into the best methods of managing their own affairs and exercising mechanic art." Hutcheson 1749, pages 273. Emphasis added. In effect, Hutcheson realized that, once primitive accumulation had taken place, the appeal of formal slavery diminished. Extra market forces of all sorts would become unnecessary, since the market itself would ensure that the working class remained in a continual state of deprivation. Patrick Colquhoun, a London police magistrate, noted, "Poverty is that state and condition in society where the individual has no surplus labor in store, or, in other words, no property or means of subsistence but what is derived from the constant exercise of industry in the various occupations of life. Poverty is therefore a most necessary and indispensable ingredient in society, without which nations and communities could not exist in a state of civilization. It is the lot of man. It is the source of wealth, since without poverty, there could be no labor. There could be no riches, no refinement, no comfort, and no benefit to those who may be possessed of wealth." Colquhoun 1815, p. 110. In Marx's words, "We find on the market a set of buyers, possessed of land, machinery, raw materials, and the means of subsistence, all of them, save land, the products of labor, and on the other hand, a set of sellers who have nothing to sell except their laboring power, their working arms and brains." Marx 1865, pages 55 to 56. Later political economists disregarded the compulsion required to force labor into the market, blithely assuming as if the market, alone, were sufficient to guarantee that the accumulation process could advance without the aid of extra market forces. Workers at the time generally understood the strategic importance of these measures to foster primitive accumulation. In this spirit, Thomas Spence, a courageous working-class advocate, proclaimed that it is childish to